Hi, everyone. People are starting to join the session. People are sending hi in the chat. Awesome to have you here.
Right now.
Yeah.
Right? The session is going to start
Yeah,
right now.
let's get the session started. Yeah. We're still trying to learn how to make hand gestures on the platform and make cool stuff appear, but we'll see if we get it right during the show. So, so let's kind of start by introducing ourselves. Josh, you go first. You haven't spoken yet.
Yeah, perfect. So my name is Josh Hendrick. I am a technology strategist with Dynatrace. I get the pleasure of both diving in deep into the technology, understanding how it works, playing with it, as well as talking to our customers and figuring out how we can help them solve their challenges and move at a faster pace.
I'll go next. I'm Yarden Laifenfeld. I'm a software engineer and a developer advocate at Dynatrace. I think I get like the same benefits as Josh, but like in a different way, because I both like see the technology when I'm developing it, and then I get to see like customers or just like developers in general as part of like being a developer advocate and seeing how the software that I've developed actually comes to life and makes change, which is pretty cool.
So my name is Liran Haimovitch. I used to be the co-founder of Lookout. Now I'm product architect at Dynatrace, and my focus these days is about how do we integrate the Lookout technology and the Lookout product into the Dynatrace platform. How do we make it seamless from both a platform perspective, from a user perspective? How can people just hopefully very soon start using the Lookout technology, the live debugging technology from within the Dynatrace platform as if it was always there? And also about how do we make sure that the technology fits the Dynatrace customer base and your environments and production environments, non-production environments, cloud, big boxes, whatever, in the best fashion possible.
So maybe we can start kind of talking about how Dynatrace, really addresses some of the challenges developers are facing today when they're trying to get to the bottom of issues, right? Everybody wants to be able to move faster, and observability, especially focused on developers, is, I think, critical. And so at Lookout, before we came to the Dynatrace team here, I really spent probably the last 4 or 5 years talking to developers daily, trying to understand their problems, what type of issues they're facing, and it really came down to having access to the right data to understand what's happening within their systems. Software systems are becoming more and more complex, more and more distributed, and there's so many moving components. Sometimes it's hard to kind of make sense of all the data. And so having the ability to get the data that you need on demand when you need it becomes more and more important.
Yeah, I think that going off of that, it's not only just getting the data we need, but also trying to figure out what's interesting, like especially with tracing, with getting this data on demand and every like log lines and everything. There's so much data, and you don't want to, like, as a developer, be looking and sifting through it all. And so I think that the analysis of that is a really powerful feature.
Yeah. For me, I've always seen that developers just need different data and use the same data differently than SREs and ops people tend to do. It's much more granular. It's about looking into the code more often than not. It's about identifying how the code is executing and why is it executing the way it is, much more than it is about understanding the health of the system and knowing that is it up or is it down, is it fast or is it slow. It's about going deeper, going into the why, and understanding how the code is impacting all of that.
Yeah, and due to the just the nature of things, getting that data in higher environments and production environments can be inherently challenging because, in today's modern software development, all that data is locked down. We have PII, GDPR, and so getting access to the data when you need it can in and of itself be a challenge, and you don't always know what data you're going to need, right, to be able to solve an issue. A bug will pop up. You'll have some kind of hint or indication of where to go to potentially solve it. You'll look at logs. You'll look at traces and metrics from different applications, and those can kind of give you a hint. But as you said, Liran, you more often than not need to get down into the code, understand exactly what's happening, and that leads to having to push new builds and try to reproduce issues in various environments. And a lot of the issues that we see can be state dependent, data dependent, and being able to have the flexibility to not necessarily know what you need up front, but be able to get that when you need it is incredibly valuable.
Developers often feel very comfortable working on their own machines, where they have some amazing tools such as debuggers and network sniffers and all. They can easily see into the process, see into the code, see into everything, stop, restart, play around, and it's much easier to troubleshoot, to understand what's going on the development machine. But obviously, the development machine is not that important. And as you're moving to higher environments, as you're moving into production, as you're moving into the cloud, all of a sudden those tools are no longer viable, no longer available, and you're kind of stuck with, as Josh mentioned, pushing more and more and more log lines, hoping to get just the right piece of data from where you need it.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of the vision, that we're looking to bring to the Dynatrace platform for developers, it really aims to solve a lot of these issues that we're talking about, right, and make access to critical information to understand what's going on in the right context is really the aim, right? And so bringing developers more and more into that picture, who more often than not get pulled into solving issues and solving problems, having that access to contextual data that's meaningful and that helps them solve problems faster is really the goal of what we're aiming to bring to market here.
I would say even that 9 out of 10 times the data needed is not really the sensitive data. It's very rare that the exact username or first name or last name or credit card number is whatever is going to cause the bug or whatever the developer is interested in. Usually, or almost always, the developer is interested in how the code is reacting to the data, how the code is executing, how the code is behaving as the result of the user state, of the configuration, of the inputs, and so on and so forth. And our tooling focuses on extracting the state of the application, about showing where the code is executing, which lines are being executed, what are the variable values, how many time a loop is being executed, is this condition true or false, and so on and so forth. And so by seeing how the code is behaving, it's so much more powerful and easier, because if you think about it, what developers do when they get the data, if they just try to run through the code, whether they do it by hand or they kind of replay it or whatever, what they really care about is how the code is behaving as the result of the input, as the result of the state. And by being able to observe the code, whether it's through live debugging, through snapshots, through dynamic logs, through dynamic traces, or any combination of those, you get much more powerful and easier to use without being so worried about the data itself. But obviously, we also offer a variety of data masking and other data governance controls to make sure that no sensitive data gets out of restricted environments.
Yeah, I think usually the content isn't what interests developers that much. Like the what the user specifically did, like the specific content of the user, more like what they did or what exactly happened at that moment, more like the meta stuff than the content itself.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
So, yeah, keep the questions coming.
So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Rookout and what we're planning for Dynatrace, but the number one feature we're planning to bring to the Dynatrace platform is live debugging. It's the ability to set what we call non-breaking breakpoints on any line of code. And when that line of code gets hit, you get a snapshot, which looks and feels very much like a debugger would when it stopped at that point. So you would get a stack trace, you would get the local variable values, you would get a trace context, you would get all the information about what's going on within that line of code, except the application didn't stop. We just captured a snapshot and then you see it after the fact. So it gets a very local debugger style experience, but in a production grade manner, in a way that's consistent with high scale, distributed applications, cloud, whether it's, it doesn't matter if you're using a distributed cloud application or a big box Java enterprise server or anything in between, you will be able to see into the code. And not only that, you can get to see everything in context. You can see both the data that was captured and the code it was captured to in context. So you can see the stack trace, but you also see the line number and the file name and all the source from that version. You also get the variables and you get variable values, but you also get the variables. So you can see it all in context and make sense of it. So Andrew is here asking about the hardware. Yarden, you want to take that?
Sure. We're not specific for a specific like cloud or GPU. I'm not sure what TPU means. But if I'm not sure what it means.
I think it's the trusted processing. No, that's a TPM. I don't know what's TPM.
But if I don't know it, it probably means that we support all of them. Almost, I don't know. But where we support specific languages. So if you're running Java, for instance, we support that. Support most popular languages, and we're planning on supporting more in the future too.
Yeah,
we're planning on rolling out live debugging support for all the primary runtimes Dynatrace currently supports. We're going to do it 1 or 2 or 3 at a time, so I don't want to overpromise anything right now. Java is definitely in. Other stuff will probably be in as well, but we have a few more months until we are GA. But once we support the runtime, we support it for the most part across cloud architectures and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Also, Java means any language running on the JVM. So Scala, Clojure, had a lot of fun. Yeah, had a lot of fun with all those languages.
Yeah. And your applications can really be running wherever you run them, right? They can be in the cloud, they can be on-prem, they can be in a Kubernetes cluster, AKS, EKS, GKE, OpenShift, whatever you'd like. So we really aim to support kind of all environments.
Now there was another question, and I kind of got lost, so they can't highlight it. But somebody who I don't know who has asked, how much effort would it take to keep code updated for new versions of Dynatrace in the future? So one of the things that we focus on is we think of developer observability and making the Dynatrace platform and all of its features more focused for developers is about source code integration. It's about how do we make sure that you see the observability data in the context of the code that created it so that you understand it better. And for that, we use Git integrations. We integrate with GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, Azure DevOps, pretty much everything. And we also automatically sync. So we automatically identify the code version that's running in the environment. And we also do it per environment, per process. So if you have environments with multiple versions, or if you have multiple environments, we know which version is running where. And then we automatically fetch from Git the correct source code for that version so that you can see the code in context and you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to do too much about it. Once you set this up, everything is shown in context of the source code automatically.
Yeah, it's really all extremely seamless, super easy to get set up with and use. I came from being a Java developer, and I remember when I first played around with the technology, 4 or 5 years ago now, is something that you could kind of immediately see the value in, right? And over the past 4 or 5 years, going to various development organizations and talking to developers, the one response that I would hear was, "That's really cool. I didn't know that that was possible." And when you're bringing a new technology to market, that's definitely the kind of thing that you want to hear, right? That people think it's really cool. They want to talk to you. They want to hear more about it. And so our customers, have definitely helped shape the direction of the product, and I think it's going to be something that's going to be pretty fun for everybody to use.
I was stuck there for a second. My Wi-Fi disconnected, but I did want to say, because Liran, you were talking about, you mentioned very briefly, but I was kind of stuck on that. The part where we're like Dynatrace already has so many features, and we're trying to look at these features from the developer's point of view. And I think that's a really interesting part of this integration. It's not just taking what Rookout was doing and putting it in Dynatrace, but it's taking everything that we can use that Dynatrace already has. If that's from the security viewpoint, I know there's a lot of things like code level vulnerabilities. If it's detecting problems that are interesting for developers, if it's stuff like that. And I think that creates a full story, not even just the live debugging aspect.
Yeah, so definitely looking forward, we are aiming to bring much more. It's about live debugging. It's about how do we make every piece of the Dynatrace experience more appealing for developer and more tailored for developer. Yeah, then careful.
Sorry.
So I think once we've joined Dynatrace, I think just a few months ago, and there is so much amazing technology here, and there's the thing in particular, the one agent technology is a marvel in how much data is collected efficiently. And in fact, some of that data, especially the data that's developer focused, is not often visible in many ways. And we're focusing on bringing much more of that data, and that's effective, making it available for developers and developer use cases.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. How do you typically address a problem before commencing the actual development? I think, well, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by addressing a problem before beginning the development, because some kind of development obviously has to happen before a problem begins. But usually I don't know, do you guys have any insights on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think once you start writing code, you have an application that you're running. It could even just be locally. It could be deployed to some cloud environment. As soon as you have some code in an application running, then you can start debugging it, right? Like Liran was mentioning, think of it kind of like you're using a local debugger, but your application can be run anywhere. It can be in the cloud. It can be in Kubernetes clusters, and you're able to dynamically understand what's happening from any line of code whenever you need that information.
Yeah, so actually, we just kind of updated the question around new feature development. So I think once you have code, then first you already have bugs, and second, once you write code and you're looking at other features, then knowing how the code is behaving is a crucial part of designing new features. Whether it's about deprecating and deleting code, whether it's about making code more efficient, whether it's about knowing which parts of the code matter. And as when you're developing new features and knowing how the code is currently being used in the production in the real world, these are all crucial questions. And the more you know about how the code is being used, the more you understand it, the better you are situated to design new features better. So observability data can play a super important role in designing new features, in their architecture, in their implementation. And obviously, once you start writing code, then you're going to start seeing bugs, whether you see them on your own machines or in integration environments, staging environments, which are often just as hard to debug as production. In all of those environments, you often find that observability tools, especially observability tools tailored for developers, provide a super valuable tool for enhancing and streamlining the development process. both for making developers happier, but also for making them more productive and to deliver higher quality software faster.
Yeah, also, like, sometimes observability actually creates the new features, right? Like, you can use observability to see what's happening, what's taking up memory or taking up CPU, and that could be your next task to fix that. So you're using observability, you're developing, and then you're using it again to make sure that everything you did works as expected.
Yeah. I think if you've been a developer at some point in time, you kind of know the ups and downs when you discover an issue and you're kind of stuck on that for days or weeks. It's just, it's not the best place, but once you solve the problem, you're like, yeah, I'm the smartest person alive. And so, making that whole process easier and more seamless, as Liran mentioned, right? Improving productivity, making developers happier. That's really kind of the main goal.
Mm-hmm. So kind of picking. So that's a good question. Why mobile app developers also need mobile? Oh, I've already seeing the question, so no need to repeat it. Anyway, so mobile real user monitoring is focused on the mobile experience, unlike web real-time monitoring. For web real-time monitoring, Dynatrace is amazing. Dynatrace have an amazing technology that allows us to identify how the application is being served when the web application is being served from the front end, and automatically inject the real user monitoring. Unfortunately, for mobile applications, we can't do that because they are served by the app stores themselves, and we can't integrate at serving time. So you have to deploy our SDKs into the mobile app so that we are enabled to monitor that and help you with that as well. Let's kind of pick which question. So Dynatrace is a pretty big university. Let me quickly look it up. There is also the Dynatrace. It's a Dynatrace University where a lot of training materials are available. You can just Google it. There's on-demand learning, live training, certifications, all of that. There is also the Dynatrace Developer. Dynatrace Developer is a new portal with the third generation platform. Dynatrace platform is much more open. There is also a built-in serverless platform, as well as workflow automation and ability to build your own front-end application. So there is a lot of place to customize using no code, low code, or full code. So you can really build new technology using DQL, using the serverless platform. You can build your own applications. You can consume the observability data that's coming in. You can also push new data, and you can use the power of Grail and other important parts of the Dynatrace platform to build your own tools. And you can learn all about that and more in the Dynatrace platform for developers. There were a couple of other questions. Let's kind of, so with the exception of the Dynatrace platform for development, which I just mentioned with Dynatrace Hub or Dynatrace for developers, Dynatrace as a whole is not a cloud provider. That's not the primary focus just yet. For now, the primary focus of Dynatrace is around monitoring your applications. So it's about once you already have applications deployed anywhere, it can be AWS, it can be Google, it can be really anywhere you want, or even on-prem. Dynatrace offers some of the best tools in the market to monitor it from the full stack, anything from the hardware to the software, the operating systems, the applications, the cloud, the real user monitoring, pretty much anything in between. And you can monitor all of that and you can see what's going on. And on top of that, there is the really amazing Davis AI that allows you to automatically detect problem and identify when things go wrong. And quite often it also tells you why.
Yeah, the cool thing about Dynatrace is what it does is it ingests data from pretty much everywhere, right? All of your infrastructure applications all over the place, and presents that back to you in meaningful ways, tries to, understand what's happening and give you root cause analysis of issues, give you relevant contextual information so that you don't just get overwhelmed with a ton of data, but rather you have things pointed out that you can use to solve the problems as quickly as possible.
So Darren is persistent, and he's bringing up this question about, can you run Dynatrace in Datadog? We haven't forgot that, we just didn't get around to it. So let's go over that again. So can you run Dynatrace in Datadog at the same time? That's actually a complex question, because Dynatrace and Datadog takes two very different approaches for monitoring. Dynatrace takes the one agent approach, where you have a single agent at the host level or a single operator at the Kubernetes level, and everything is managed through that. So we cover that end to end, while Datadog has a more of a piecemeal approach, where you have one agent for the host, you have a different agent for the code. I'm not saying what's better, even though I'm paid to say that one of them is better than the other, but it's very different. And obviously, the question becomes, what do you want to run together? Do you want to run both hosts together? Do you want to run the APM stuff together? Do you want to run both? Also, you can expect differences between different runtimes. Java versus .NET might not act the same, but I would ask, why would you want to run both of them at the same time? I'm not sure from a performance perspective it makes sense to run two monitoring tools at the same time.
Yeah, I'd also say that they might interfere with one another.
Yeah, they might interfere with one another, both from a functional perspective and from a performance perspective. But even more so, it's not as interesting to see how they operate together. What would be interesting from my point of view would be to look at the performance overhead each of them does independently. So I would probably set up one server with each and stress test them, and then look at CPU monitoring, memory monitoring, or just requests per second. But I would also say that the two tools are very different, and it's not just about performance. There is so much more. Of course, we all prefer Dynatrace. So if you need a POC for a customer, then I would set them up side by side on different servers, and then monitor which server is taking more CPU, more memory, more requests per second. But the two tools are incredibly different. Personally, I can say that we've migrated. Before we were acquired, we were a Datadog customer. Then we moved to being a Dynatrace customer, obviously using Dynatrace to monitor internally as we migrated. The two tools are incredibly different. In particular, when it comes to data collection, Dynatrace is much more automated. It collects a lot more data out of the box. Datadog is much more SDK-oriented, let's call it. You deploy the agent, and then you start instrumenting yourself to start collecting data. Dynatrace comes with a lot more data collection out of the box. A lot more. Much smarter instrumentation, very powerful, very deep automatic instrumentation, data collection for everything from Java to Go and everything in between. So much more data is being collected. The deployment strategy is very different. I'm not saying performance is not important. It is, but the two tools are so different that I wouldn't focus my decision on that unless for some reason performance really is the single most important thing for the customer. And it's also important to know that for the basic, Datadog won't give you as much as the basic Dynatrace. For Datadog to get that level of data, you probably need to customize, which might end up costing more performance down the line, which is also something to take into account. But we can definitely set you up with one of our SEs who is much more knowledgeable about competitive than us, but those are kind of my thoughts on that. But we can definitely follow up on that with people who are more knowledgeable than us. That's a big question. That's a big question. And I know one of the most anticipated, hotly debated feature for Perform that's coming up in 2 weeks. It's the Dynatrace annual conference. For those of you not familiar with it, it's in Vegas. Yarden and I are going to be there. We're hoping to see you all. It's the Traces on Grail. It's supposed to finally be launched. It's a huge milestone for everyone involved, with so much being changed. And I think that in some way, you as customers shouldn't care that much about Grail, because we're moving the data storage from the internal named session storage Dynatrace to the Grail storage. But it's about what it's enabling you to do, whether it is about how we're storing it. And definitely there is one huge benefit of Grail is the fact that you can run DQL queries, you can customize, you can run super fancy queries to answer super complex questions, which are often needed. And sometimes you just want to know, is this fast or is this slow? You probably don't need DQL for that. But sometimes you know that certain queries for certain customers are slow and you're trying to figure it out or trying to correlate stuff. And that's often when DQL comes into play. As a power user, you can do so much more through these open programming languages. But there's also so much more that goes into Dynatrace, into Grail. One of that is the ability to store spans. Right now, if you don't have control over how long spans or traces are being kept and how are they sampled. Once it's moving into Grail, you're going to get a lot more power into your hands. You can increase the retention times. You can change sampling rates. You can get a lot more data if you need it, for if and when and how you need it. And also, you're going to get a much more alignment between open telemetry or open and pure path. So whether you're using Dynatrace proprietary pure path or using OTel or a combination of the two, the new data formats that's being built here are going to be so much more aligned. You're going to get a much better experience. And also, I can assure that down the line, this more powerful engine behind the scenes is going to allow for more and more advanced use cases. And also, as we mentioned, once the data is in Grail, you can also develop your own apps. So if there are anything you need, any custom questions you want to answer, any custom dashboards, you can really go wild and build everything you want out of the gate. Did we miss any questions? Things have been kind of hectic on the chat, so we might have if we missed anyone, feel free to ask again. And if we haven't missed you, but you have a question, you're wondering about it, feel free to ask it. I've all of a sudden become an expert on tons of stuff I didn't know that much about.
Great answers. So yeah, just to kind of plug Perform as well, like Liran mentioned, we've been kind of focused on the developer aspect of things, right? And so we're going to have some very cool previews of the technology that we're talking about here in terms of the focus on developers coming at Perform. So if you have if you're going to be there, stop by the booth and you can actually see a demo of some of the new stuff. It should be cool.
Or you can also log in online for some of the sessions. We're gonna show a demo of live debugging within the Dynatrace platform, which is already a real live demo that's already working. It's not ready just yet for customer use, but it's definitely an amazing demo. And before you know it, we're gonna have it available for preview customers and even GA. So if you're interested in seeing more and learning more, look us up online, offline, at Perform, and otherwise.
Yeah, just to kind of, I guess, to piece that whole flow together, right? So, you know, I imagine most of the folks here have maybe used Dynatrace or played around with it in some capacity. You know, imagine, you know, you have some kind of issue that you identify. There's a problem that's created. You know, maybe it's an issue with one of your microservices applications. You know, you can kind of follow that along, really all the way down to the code level. So, you know, what we'll kind of take you through in greater depth is, you know, around Perform, and you'll see it over the coming months, you know, is the ability to kind of trace this problem down deeper and deeper, and to really understand what's happening at the code. Like Liran had talked about earlier, understand what the variable values were that led to a specific issue happening. So, you know, you get this traceability really all the way from the front end through the back end systems down to the code level, which is extremely powerful.
That's a super interesting question. I think we can all answer that, each with our own answer. So who wants to go first?
I want to go last.
So Josh, you get to go first. You get to go.
Sounds good.
What Dynatrace feature would you recommend most for developers?
Yeah, so of course the coming feature, the live debugger, that's number one. Not in the product yet, but coming soon, where you can live debug your applications at the code level. But there's also a lot more that are focused on developers, right? So you can kind of you can understand kind of back traces within Dynatrace, how which systems were called in the course of a specific set of transactions through a system. You can even dive down to the level of understanding, thread dumps, memory dumps, and get in, to understanding what class or what part of the system was taking up, the most memory, the most processing time, which can be extremely valuable. And there's a lot of filters, right? So if you're looking for transactions that match a specific a specific set of criteria, maybe coming in with a specific HTTP header, or match some kind of variable, you can really get fine-grained in terms of analyzing the data that you need.
So I give two features. Hopefully, Yarden will still have something left, because she has to be, but she has to be last, so it's her problem. So one feature I think every developer should look at is logs on Grail. Again, it's not about the technology behind the scenes. You shouldn't care too much about that, but I really do think that Grail is becoming a game changer here in the ability to ingest everything in a storage that feels hot but is priced as cold. And the fact that you can just send in as many logs as you want and not worry about it, and efficiently query it in a cost-effective manner, I think that's a huge. I think that's a huge win. I think that's a huge change, and I think we've all, as developers, are hyper focused on the cost of logs and constantly optimizing that. It's a never-ending vicious cycle, and I think logs on Grail really offers a changer. I'm not gonna lie, the technology is not perfect just yet, but we are making amazing progress. It's already unbelievable. It's one of the, I think, most jaw-dropping thing I've seen since I've joined Dynatrace. And if you have any feedback on that, feel free to share. I think it's really amazing. And second, just briefly touched upon that, it's not very known to people, and it's buried a bit in the UI, but the one agent comes with some amazing profiling technology, and it's continuous profiling. It's always on. It has negligible performance impact. It's always on. You're not paying extra for it, not in performance, not in dollars, not in anything. You just have to look it up. And especially for Java, where it's the bread and butter of Dynatrace, you have both CPU profiling and memory profiling right out of the gate. The memory profiling is mind-blowing. You get to see every allocation and deallocation, how long objects have been kept. For continuous profiling, you can see what's taking up CPU, and you can look at that in a single server or across multiple servers. It's truly amazing. It's truly amazing technology. We are looking to renovate and spice that up and make it a bit more fun to use over the next couple of years. But for now, it's already mind-blowing technology, and it's available for you right out of the gate in the platform.
Great. So I wanted to go last because I have a few broader things to say than like specific features. I definitely agree with what you two said, but I also think, first of all, I think this is the question that we're going to be answering like heading into 2024 and for the next few years. Like that's the big question of developer observability. What are we focusing on? What's interesting? And so it's not a specific feature. It's the whole package. Now, I think I've said this, I feel like I've said this multiple times already, but I really feel like Dynatrace has so many features that are really catering towards developers, and they're just not fit for developer use yet, because they're in different parts of the app. And so when we look at that question, we need to be thinking, how do we make this available more for developers? So answering this question is one way, but it definitely needs to be not only in Ask Me Anythings, but also in a more public place for everyone to see. And the second thing I'll say, which is totally different, is that in an ideal world, we would not need observability for developers, because developers would deploy and their code would be bugless and perfect. And I don't know, if a Kubernetes pod fell down, it was only because the whole internet would go down and it would just go back up and everything would be perfect. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But I do think of observability in that way, that we're usually using observability either to ensure that we won't have problems in the future, or when we do have a problem and we need to see what happened. So for the first part, there's actually, I'm going to be plugging someone else who's not here. His session, he's going to have a hands-on training session in Perform, and he's going to be talking about load balancing comparisons using Dynatrace. It's really, really cool. So if you're interested in that, I think you should tune into that. And that's one way to, before you deploy, to make sure that things are working well. And then after you deploy, all the features that you two just said, I think Davis AI and problems, as we mentioned, is also a really strong feature. So that's my answer. That's why I wanted to be last. Was just thinking of things as we were going.
Now we've got another question upcoming, and it's about one of your favorite topics.
What is it? Wait. Will I be able to debug my machine learning model developed in Python and Dynatrace? Why is it one of my favorite topics?
Spark, Java, PySpark. Omer isn't around, so now it's your favorite.
Okay.
Or not around on this session.
Yeah. I'm actually not very familiar with machine learning models, so maybe you can answer that one.
Okay, so I'll answer that. So Rookout, the Rookout agent, the Dynatrace One agent, supports debugging and monitoring distributed applications. Spark, if you're using Scala or Java, that's already supported, and you're going to have once live debugging goes live, it's going to support Scala Spark and Java Spark and so on, so you can debug that right out of the gate. The Python supporting the One agent is in the works. I don't have an ETA for that yet, but hopefully once that will be available, there's also going to be live debugging supporting there. We already have the technology for that. It's just about integrating and releasing it as part of the One agent, and then Python and PySpark will be supported as well. And then you will be able to debug batch processing and machine learning and all the data processing right now. I would also mention that today we already have customers using Rookout for Scala Spark, for PySpark, and I'm very happy with that. It's one of our, I think, most heavy duty and most demanding use cases. But it's a very productive one.
So is anybody that's listening in going to be attending Perform? Las Vegas. Be a fun place.
So, anything else we want to chat about? Any other topics come to mind?
Do you want to maybe talk about just in general why it's important to have developer observability? I think we talked a lot about the specifics of developer observability and Dynatrace, but maybe we could take this to a more high level conversation.
Sure. Go ahead, start.
I asked a question.
You want me to answer the question? I can do that as well. That's actually an interesting question. So, will Davis Copilot be able to tell me where are bugs in my code? It's actually that's actually an interesting question in a way, but it's because it answers Yarden question with a question about how is developer observability different than how developer observability different from traditional observability. And the way it's different, I think, first and foremost, is that developers ask different questions, like this one, which I'll touch upon in a second, I promise. And so first, developers ask different questions. And second, developers aren't used to working outside their laptops, especially aren't used to operating in production. And whether it's about shift left, whether it's about culture, whether it's about ownership, whether it's just about fixing bugs, it's super valuable to have developers focused on outside their laptops, outside their lab, focused on production, focused on the real world, focused on the customer experience. And so it's super important that the observability tool caters to them, whether it's in the experience, in the data being collected, in the questions being answered, and so on and so forth. The more we tailor observability tools to meet developers' needs, the more they will use them, and the more we're going to see an impact on the organization and engineering. Now, around Davis Copilot is a super amazing, super cool, super new feature in Dynatrace. It's about how do we get years of research done at Dynatrace at machine learning around causal AI and predictive AI and all of that. How do we make that available as a chat using Gen AI, kind of like ChatGPT for observability? When will this go wrong? What will happen here? Why is this broken? How do I build a new dashboard? And questions go as far as you want. And definitely as part of the developer observability journey, we want to use the power of Davis AI and the power of Gen AI to adapt to developer questions. We want. I'm not sure if asking Davis AI where the bugs is feasible, but we'll definitely aim for that. But even asking about, let's say, a simpler question. Let's say you are looking at a function, you want to know how long is this function taking. There are many ways to answer that question. You can look at log timestamps, you can look at metrics, you can look at spans. There are many ways to answer that questions, and it really depends on what data is available. And as I mentioned, the Dynatrace platform is huge, and there might be 5, 10 different signals that you could try to interpret to answer that questions. By having a copilot that's familiar with those signals, can go through them, that can automatically check which one is relevant for your needs, which one is the data needed to answer your questions, then we can take those questions you're asking and make them much more accessible for developers. So you could ask Davis, where is the bug in this function, or how long is this function taking, or how often it's being called, and Davis will hopefully be able to correlate all the data and build answers to those much more detailed questions. And we're definitely looking at that experience and how can we make Davis Copilot answers developer-focused questions as well. That's definitely something we're looking at.
Yeah, if you look back historically, Yarden, going back to kind of your question, right? When you looked at observability tools, they have historically been focused on operations teams, right? People that are kind of running and managing software in production. And more often than not, when there's an issue that can't be answered, development teams need to be pulled into the picture to kind of get to the bottom of issues. And so they typically come into that conversation kind of blind with what was happening, to get to that point. And so bringing developers more and more into the conversation by including tools that, cater to solving and answering some of the questions that they'll typically ask, right? Like Liran, you were just mentioning, right? Things that, can potentially reoccur, issues that, it could be memory issues, CPU issues, whatever it is, being able to kind of have contextual information around that can just make life easier. So I think that's really the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I also think that a really interesting part of developer observability, if we compare it to like the old school observability, is that in developer observability, we're usually looking like a few minutes into the past, while in just like the basic observability, we're looking at what's happening now, like what's down, what's up, what's running. And then in developer observability, we're looking at what logs, so it's something that already happened, or traces, spans, all this context of what already was. And so it's kind of like this whole new realm. This is more of like a developer, speaking as a developer of this tool. It's an interesting world of problems of how do we have enough information from the past to be able to research it when we need it in the future. So I think that's a really interesting challenge that we're facing.
Yeah. Or how do we adapt the data we're collecting in real time to change, to adapt to rise to real-time questions. So we don't have necessarily to have 2 years of history of data just to answer a question. What if we can just start collecting in real time and getting insights on the fly as new questions arise?
Yeah, I think
It's really about,
Davis does a really good job of that.
It's about, do we walk backwards from the data we have, or do we define the data that will best answer our questions and start collecting it as quickly as possible? And it's really about a combination of both. I think one of the challenges of developer observability is that questions change so frequently and are often so detailed. It's really hard or next to impossible to just try to collect everything all the time and always have the data you need. So it's much more frequent you have to adapt the observability. And the more agile you are in adapting observability, the easier it becomes to answer questions without having to walk backwards very hard from the data you just happen to have.
Yeah, I think that's like both Davis AI gives a lot of insight into that, but also DQL and the ability to build a custom like view of your data for your specific use case will really allows the adaptation that you're talking about.
Yeah, DQL is also super powerful in the ability to combine different signals and correlate them, because with each signal providing you a piece of the puzzle, the more you can automatically correlate them and combine them and reduce them, you can actually calculate very simple bottom line answers out of a lot of raw data. No. So, Josh, any final thoughts?
Yeah, coming up to the top of the hour here. I think probably can speak for the whole team. I think we're super excited to kind of continue to bring this vision forward. Everything that we've been talking about here, around making observability simpler, not just for developers, right? Developers can kind of be, some of the folks that get immediate advantage out of this, but really, that then flows through the whole team, the whole software organization, giving them the ability to move faster and quicker. And Liran, as you just mentioned, be more agile in things that they're doing. So, that's really the goal. I think come check us out at Perform. We'd love to have deeper, one-on-one conversations, talk about some of the challenges that you are all facing, and to continue to bring value to everyone out there.
Yeah, then you want to go last again?
No, I can go now. I think I know that like observability in general, developer observability isn't that new, but it does feel really new to me. I feel like we're making like really, really big progress, like not specifically at Dynatrace, but also in the tech world in general. And so I'm really interested to see where it goes, because I always find myself surprised at how observability helps specific use cases, because suddenly like I was surprised a while back because someone told me that they were using developer observability to help the onboarding process. And so like using observability, developers got to know their code much faster than just by looking at the code and kind of reading documentation. And I think that it just kind of, it's like one story out of tons of stories that kind of show how much potential this has. And I'm so excited to hear about all these different stories. I really hope I get to speak to some people about this at Perform too. I think that everyone's use is so unique, and it's just fun to talk about.
Looking at following up kind of on what you then said, I think developer observability is a changing in many ways the paradigm of observability in general. I think specifically for us at Dynatrace, we're on a dual journey. On the one hand, we're trying to bring the technology that was part of Rookout into the hands of as many Dynatracers as possible, whether it's about live debugging or other tools and use cases we've built over the years, live profiling, live metrics, live logging, whatever. We want to bring as many of those features and capabilities into the hands of as many developers as possible. On the other end, there really are quite a few of amazing gems within the Dynatrace platform, whether it's around general observability tools or whether it's around developer-specific observability tools that are not known enough and are not used enough. And there are really some amazing stuff in there. And we're trying to bring those features to front, make them shine, polish them a bit as needed, and make sure that everybody enjoys them as much as possible.
Yep.
So, John, what do we do now? So John is telling us to say goodbye. So I guess that's
Do the fireworks.
No, I have no idea I've done that. It was as we were setting up for the show, I started moving my hands and my screen went fireworks and stuff. So it was really fun being here. It was really fun chatting with you two, Yarden and Josh. It was really fun getting some amazing questions from the audience. We can try to do it together, but I don't think that's gonna work.
Yeah, appreciate everyone joining, and we look forward to what the future may bring.
Awesome. Yep. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being on.
Thanks, everyone.